Hi, it's a pleasure to have you here. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe to the channel and like this video. The lace on my gown fluttered in the breeze as I stepped into the garden, my hand wrapped tightly around my father's arm, the violin swelling in the background as if the world itself were celebrating. Michael stood at the altar in a navy blue suit, eyes glistening, lips trembling just slightly, as if he couldn't believe this was really happening. Our family circled us like a cocoon of joy, my mother already dabbing at tears, his sister holding back a squeal. The sun peeked through the trees at just the right moment, painting everything gold as I whispered my vows with a voice full of hope. When he said, "I do," and slipped the ring onto my finger, I swear I felt time stop, just long enough for me to believe completely that nothing could ever go wrong again. As we stepped away from the altar, fingers intertwined, it felt like the entire universe had aligned to bless our love. After 3 years of late-night phone calls, weekend road trips, quiet breakfasts, and shared secrets, I was certain Michael was my person. He knew my flaws and still looked at me like I was magic. He made me feel safe, seen, and chosen, like I wasn't just loved but needed. When we danced under the fairy lights that evening, it felt like we were the only two people in the world. Every smile, every touch, every word was exactly how I'd imagined this day would be since I was a little girl. I had no idea that perfection could be so fleeting. Michael stood with a glass of champagne in his hand, his tie already loosened, cheeks flushed with joy, and eyes fixed on me like I was the only thing that mattered. My mom was at our table, dabbing her eyes with a napkin, smiling through tears that held years of prayers answered. His mother, proud and glowing, raised her glass first, mouthing something like "finally," as if she'd always known we were meant for each other. I felt my throat tighten as he cleared his and said, "To the woman who taught me what love really means, I'll love you forever." The room erupted in applause, but I was frozen in that moment, every cell in my body absorbing his words like a promise from the stars. I smiled through trembling lips, holding back the overwhelming swell in my chest. It never even crossed my mind to question him. When the reception finally ended and the last dance was danced, we climbed into a cab and headed straight to the Plaza Hotel, the one we had talked about since our first trip to New York. The driver congratulated us and offered us bottled water, but I barely heard him. I was leaning into Michael's shoulder, laughing about something silly, high on joy. The city lights blurred past the window, and every turn made it feel more like a movie than real life. I kept glancing at my new wedding band, still getting used to the weight of it, the meaning of it. As we pulled up to the grand entrance, the doorman opened the door like we were royalty. I was still wearing my dress, still glowing from everything, completely unaware of how this night would rewrite my future. I thought I was stepping into a fairy tale. The moment we entered the grand lobby, I felt like I was walking through a dream spun from marble, chandeliers, and whispered elegance. My heels echoed across the polished floor as I clung to Michael's arm, both of us grinning like teenagers. People glanced at us, some curious, others smiling, maybe remembering their own first night as husband and wife. I couldn't stop touching his hand, the edge of his jacket, like I had to keep reminding myself he was really mine now. Everything sparkled. The lights, the marble, even the quiet hum of violins playing from somewhere out of sight. He looked at me like I was the only thing he saw, and I believed every word he'd said hours before. I thought the magic would never fade. At the front desk, a young receptionist looked up, spotted my dress, and immediately beamed, whispering something to her colleague before turning back to us. "Congratulations, Mr. and Mrs. Carter," she said warmly, handing us an envelope with our suite key and 2 complimentary champagne vouchers. I giggled, cheeks sore from smiling, and leaned my head against Michael's shoulder. He kissed the top of my hair and whispered, "Welcome to forever, Mrs. Carter," and my stomach flipped in the best way. The bellhop took our bags and led us toward the elevator, chatting about how lovely our suite was. Everything felt like a celebration. Even the wallpaper seemed to shimmer with joy. I didn't know then how quickly warmth could turn to cold. As the doors slid shut, we were finally alone again, the city noise fading into a hush that made my heart pound louder. Michael squeezed my hand gently, then leaned in to kiss my cheek and whispered, "Now it's just you and me forever." I laughed, leaning my head on his shoulder, staring at our reflection in the mirrored walls. Two people madly in love, beautifully dressed, impossibly happy. The elevator climbed smoothly, each floor bringing us closer to what I thought would be the most romantic night of our lives. He looked calm, content, humming under his breath like he always did when he was relaxed. I felt safe. I felt certain. I didn't see the storm brewing just beyond that smile. When the door opened, I gasped. The room was glowing with soft candlelight and the scent of roses. Petals scattered across the bed and floor in a trail that led to a small table set for two. A jazz record played low in the background, the kind of song that wraps around you like silk. There was champagne on ice beside the bed, two flutes waiting, and a personalized note that read, "Here's to the beginning of your forever." Michael wrapped his arms around me from behind, pressing a kiss into my neck, and I closed my eyes, overwhelmed. This was everything I had dreamed of and more. The view of Central Park outside was breathtaking, but nothing compared to the way he looked at me. I believed I had everything I would ever need in that room. We had barely set down our bags, my heels already kicked off, when the phone rang, its sharp tones slicing through the soft music and laughter. I looked at Michael, surprised, and he shrugged before answering. I wandered toward the window, pulling back the curtain just enough to see the city glittering beneath us. He spoke softly, nodded once, then hung up and turned to me with a slight frown. "It's just a quick thing with the credit card downstairs," he said. "I'll be right back." I kissed him, still floating on air, and watched him grab his jacket. In that moment, I didn't feel the weight of anything changing. I thought it was just a brief interruption. He was gone no more than a minute when I sat on the edge of the bed and replayed the day in my mind, heart still racing from joy. I glanced at the phone, wondering if it might ring again, and almost laughed at myself, nerves probably. But then I noticed something strange. Michael had left his laptop bag on the desk, halfway unzipped, something he never did. I walked over without thinking and closed it gently, but the motion triggered the screen to light up. It wasn't locked. A chat window blinked at the bottom, and curiosity tugged at me. I hesitated, fingers grazing the trackpad. Then I saw it. The name at the top of the message thread, Jessica. And something inside me went completely still. As I closed the laptop with shaking hands, I tried to convince myself it was nothing. Maybe an old message, maybe a mistake. I needed to believe that, if only for a few minutes longer. So I told myself, focus on tonight, and decided to do something playful to make him smile when he returned. I went to the suitcase, found the delicate white lingerie I had chosen weeks ago, and held it up to the light with trembling fingers. I wanted to turn the page, to reclaim the moment before doubt crept in completely. Maybe if I surprised him, we could laugh and move past it. Deep down, I already knew I was lying to myself. I changed quickly, my heart pounding louder with every movement, the silk of the lingerie cold against my skin. In the mirror, I barely recognized the girl trying to act like nothing was wrong, like she hadn't just seen her husband's ex-girlfriend's name glowing on his screen. I put on a touch of lipstick, ran my fingers through my hair, and forced a smile. My stomach was a knot, but I clung to the idea that maybe this could still be a night worth remembering. Maybe he would walk through the door, apologize for the confusion, hold me close, and tell me I was everything. I wanted to believe that love was stronger than fear. I wanted to believe in him. Trying to be playful, I tiptoed across the room and slid behind the long velvet curtains by the window, careful not to make the fabric move. My heart was thundering, half with anticipation, half with dread as I crouched down and waited. I imagined him walking in, calling my name, looking for me, maybe laughing when he saw me hiding like a lovesick teenager. I held my breath, clutching the curtain with both hands, willing myself to relax. The room smelled of roses and candle wax, the music still playing softly in the background. Every second felt like an hour, but I was determined to make this a memory we could laugh about someday. I didn't realize the joke would be on me. The lock clicked, and the door creaked open slowly, letting in the soft noise of the hallway before shutting again with a thud. I held perfectly still, every muscle tensed, my heart leaping with excitement and fear. I expected to hear him say my name, maybe something teasing or sweet, but the room stayed eerily quiet. No footsteps toward the bathroom, no call for me, not even a sigh of contentment. I listened carefully, eyes squeezed shut, waiting for any sound that would pull me out of hiding. Instead, I heard the soft rustle of fabric, the creak of the desk chair. He wasn't looking for me. He didn't even wonder where I was. I stayed frozen behind the curtain, every cell in my body alert, confused by the unnatural silence that followed his return. He didn't call out. He didn't seem surprised that I wasn't in the room, wasn't unpacking, wasn't curled up on the bed waiting for him. I could hear him moving casually, as if nothing in the world were unusual. There was no excitement in his voice, no anticipation. The laughter I had expected never came, and the longer I waited, the colder the air around me felt. This wasn't how newlyweds acted. This wasn't how love was supposed to sound. I heard the soft click of the laptop opening again, the gentle hum of keys being pressed, and my stomach turned to stone. He was typing calm and steady, like this was just another night in a hotel room, not our wedding night. I pressed my hand against my mouth to keep from making a sound, eyes wide, frozen between disbelief and heartbreak. The glow of the screen cast a faint light on the floor, and I could see the faint movement of his fingers. He wasn't texting me. He wasn't planning something romantic. He was having a conversation I was never meant to witness, and I already knew who it was with. The pale blue light of the screen flickered against the walls, sharp and cold, stripping the room of its warmth. I could see the outline of his face from my hiding place, focused, slightly smiling, lips parting just enough to let out a soft chuckle. He was leaning in, fully present, completely unaware of the woman crouched just feet away, heart crumbling one beat at a time. I didn't blink. I couldn't. I felt like a ghost, invisible on the night I was supposed to be most seen. My chest ached with the effort it took to stay silent. I already knew what I was going to see, but it didn't prepare me for the pain. A ping echoed through the room, and I saw his eyes light up as a new message popped onto the screen. He leaned in closer, lips curling into something between a smirk and a sigh, and I saw her name in bold, Jessica. It was a photo, her in bed, tousled hair, barely covered in pajamas, biting her lip in a way that was clearly meant for him. My blood ran cold. This wasn't a mistake or a ghost from the past. This was intentional, present, intimate. His reaction told me everything I needed to know. He wasn't shocked. He was pleased. Jessica. The name rang in my ears like a fire alarm. The woman he'd sworn was long gone, a mistake. Someone I don't even think about anymore. The woman he'd deleted from social media, from his phone, from every piece of our shared life, or so I thought. I had asked about her once, early in our relationship, and he'd looked me in the eyes and said, "She's part of a past I've buried." But clearly he had been digging. As I watched his eyes soften at her photo, my heart shattered in slow motion. I was no longer the only woman in the room. Maybe I never had been. My breath caught as I saw his fingers move again, typing quickly, confidently, like this was their secret language, their ritual. There was no guilt in his expression, just desire. And then came the message that broke something deep inside me. "Wish I was in your bed right now." He didn't hesitate. He didn't look over his shoulder. He just hit send like it was the most natural thing in the world. On the night we had promised forever, he had already chosen someone else. I sat there, half naked, forgotten behind a curtain, watching my marriage unravel before it had even begun. My body stopped reacting. No breath, no tears, just a numb stillness that felt louder than any scream I could have let out. I watched him lean back in the chair, stretching slightly, grinning at a woman who wasn't me, on a night that was supposed to be ours. The same hands that had just held mine at the altar were now tapping keys that betrayed every vow he'd spoken. I didn't understand how someone could shift so completely, so effortlessly, in the span of a few hours. I wanted to burst out, to scream, to throw the laptop against the wall, but I couldn't move. All I could do was listen to the blood rush in my ears and the quiet crack of something inside me breaking. The betrayal didn't come like thunder, it came like silence. He typed another line with such ease it made me sick. "You have no idea how bad I want you right now." I squeezed the velvet curtain in my fists, trying not to fall apart right there on the floor. Still dressed in lingerie meant for someone who no longer existed to him. My heart didn't just break, it collapsed. I had believed in his words, in his eyes, in the way he touched me like I was his whole world. But none of that was real. He was still tethered to her, still feeding the flame of a relationship he claimed had burned out. And here I was, alone behind a curtain, humiliated in silence on the first night of our marriage. After sending the message, he stared at the screen for a moment, then slowly closed the laptop and pushed it aside. The room was still glowing softly with candlelight, but all the warmth had been drained from it. He stood, stretched, yawned, and walked toward the door without even glancing around, without a single thought of me. I waited for him to call out, to wonder where I was, but he didn't. He just left. I heard the door click softly behind him, and the silence that followed was unbearable. I stepped out from behind the curtain, trembling but strangely composed, as if my heart had gone quiet just to keep me standing. The room felt colder now, like the betrayal had sucked all the oxygen from it. The petals on the bed looked ridiculous, the champagne untouched, the music suddenly irritating in its attempt at romance. I walked slowly across the room, my bare feet silent on the carpet, my reflection in the mirror blurred by tears I hadn't yet allowed to fall. I kept thinking this can't be real, but it was. The same man who had whispered forever into my ear hours ago had just told another woman he wanted to be in her bed. My lungs ached from holding in the scream I couldn't afford to release. I felt hollow, like I'd been erased from my own wedding night. I grabbed the nearest piece of clothing, a sweater and jeans I had packed for the morning after, and threw them on without thinking. My fingers moved on instinct, zipping the bag, slipping my phone into my pocket, avoiding the mirror. I wasn't going to wait for him to come back with some excuse or lie. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I needed to get out of that room before I shattered into pieces I wouldn't be able to gather. I checked the hallway, quiet and empty, and slipped out the second door, the one for housekeeping. I didn't cry. I didn't speak. I just moved because if I stopped, I was afraid I wouldn't be able to again. I turned the corner and ran straight into him. Michael coming back down the hall with a water bottle in his hand, looking calm, maybe even bored. His eyebrows lifted in surprise. "Where were you?" he asked, his voice casual, as if he hadn't just committed emotional murder. I forced a smile so practiced it surprised even me. "Just checking out the hotel garden," I said lightly, and he nodded, accepting the lie without question. That was the moment I knew he didn't see me. He never had. I was just playing a role he expected me to play. And I played it just long enough to get through the night. Back in the suite, I told him I needed a moment to freshen up, and he nodded, already reaching for the remote. I stepped into the bathroom and turned the water as hot as it would go, steam rising instantly. The second the door closed behind me, my knees buckled, and I grabbed the sink for balance. The water roared behind me, drowning out the sobs that finally broke free from my chest. My skin burned, but I didn't care. I needed to feel something real, something physical, something that could distract me from the pain slicing through my chest. I stayed under the stream until I could barely breathe, and still I didn't come out. They came like a flood, hot and violent, crashing through the dam I had built just to survive the last hour. I slid down to the floor of the shower, curling into myself, letting the water mix with the tears that wouldn't stop. I cried for the girl who had believed in forever, for the love that had been so carelessly discarded, for the version of me that thought she was safe. I cried because silence had been my only witness. I cried until my throat ached and my hands were shaking from the cold that eventually set in. I didn't know how long I stayed there. Time stopped mattering. All that existed was grief. When I finally turned off the water and wiped the fog from the mirror, I barely recognized the woman staring back at me. Her eyes were red, her lips swollen, her face a twisted echo of the joy she had felt just hours before. The makeup was gone, the glow erased, the innocence shattered. I touched the glass, half expecting it to crack under the weight of what I had become. I wanted to scream at her, shake her, ask why she hadn't seen this coming. But she just stared, hollow and still, holding the truth like a bruise. And I realized I was never going to be the same. I stepped out of the bathroom wrapped in a towel, my voice calm now, practiced. "I'm not feeling well," I said quietly, avoiding his eyes. He looked up from the bed, where he was already halfway under the covers, scrolling on his phone. "Do you want to go down for dinner?" he asked without much interest. "No," I said quickly. "I just need to lie down." He shrugged, turned back to his screen and didn't ask a single question. That told me everything I needed to know. I climbed into bed beside him, heart in pieces, pretending to sleep while he drifted off without a care. Michael didn't even glance at me as I turned off the bedside lamp and curled away from him, wrapping the blanket tightly around my body like armor. He clicked through channels lazily, stopping on some action movie, completely unfazed by the fact that his wife had just canceled dinner on their wedding night. There was no concern, no affection, not even a touch of curiosity. He didn't reach for me, didn't ask if I needed anything. Just settled in like it was any other night in any other hotel with someone he barely knew. I stared at the wall, blinking back fresh tears. I had no energy left to cry. I realized in that moment that my absence would have meant as little to him as my silence did. And yet somehow I still lay there hoping for something, anything, to prove me wrong. Hours passed while the city hummed softly outside, but I didn't sleep, not even for a second. I stared at the ornate ceiling, tracing patterns in the molding, just to keep my mind from spiraling. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her photo again, saw his smile, heard his voice as he whispered promises to me hours before betraying them. I wondered if he'd be texting her again once he thought I was asleep. I wondered if he'd ever truly loved me at all, or if I had just been a placeholder in a story he never planned to finish. The silence between us grew thicker with each passing hour, louder than any fight we'd ever had. And by sunrise, I knew with absolute certainty that my marriage had died before it ever really lived. When the first rays of light pushed through the sheer curtains, the room looked colder, emptier, almost sterile. I sat up slowly, muscles aching from the tension I'd carried all night, my mouth dry, my eyes raw. Michael was still asleep, turned away from me, breathing deeply, peaceful in a way that made my stomach turn. I stared at the back of his head and wondered how someone could be so emotionally distant and still call themselves a husband. I slid out of bed quietly, walking to the window with bare feet and numb hands. The city looked the same as it always had, but I had changed entirely. I didn't know what would happen next, but I knew I couldn't stay silent anymore. When he woke up and stretched, yawning like a man on vacation, I turned from the window and faced him head-on. "Who's Jessica?" I asked, voice low but steady, cutting through the quiet like a blade. He blinked, his body tensing slightly, the mask of casual ease beginning to slip. "What are you talking about?" he asked, scratching the back of his neck, already starting to fumble. I didn't flinch. I didn't give him room to escape. I stepped closer and met his eyes fully. "Don't lie to me," I said. "I saw the messages." He stood up, hands in the air like a man wrongly accused, already shaking his head. "Babe, you're overreacting," he said quickly, as if my heartbreak could be dismissed with a label. "It was nothing, I swear." It was just a stupid moment. His voice cracked, but I didn't believe it was from guilt. It was the sound of someone trying to manage a situation, not fix it. I don't know what you think you saw, but it's not what it looks like, he added, stepping closer. Like proximity could erase betrayal. I took a step back, suddenly repulsed by the nearness of him. He still thought this was salvageable. That terrified me more than the cheating itself. Open your laptop, I said, my voice calm but sharper than glass. He froze, eyes narrowing slightly as his mind calculated the risks. Why? You don't trust me now? He said with a nervous laugh, reaching for deflection like a lifeline. I didn't move. I didn't blink. Open it, I repeated, and the air between us shifted. No longer wife and husband, but accuser and liar. He hesitated just long enough to confirm everything I feared. I crossed my arms, watching the weight of the truth settle into his posture. There were no more words left to soften the blow. I wanted proof, and I wanted it now. That single beat of hesitation was louder than any confession. He looked at the laptop, then back at me, his mouth twitching like he wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. And in that silence, everything inside me went still. He didn't deny it again. He didn't rush to open the laptop or even pretend to. That pause, that awful telling pause, told me everything I needed. I saw the guilt bloom in his eyes, the kind that comes too late to matter. My heart didn't race, it slowed. There was nothing left to protect. Just the ugly truth hanging in the air between us. I moved past him and opened the laptop myself, my hands surprisingly steady as the screen lit up. The chat window was still open, like it had been waiting for me. The messages lined up like daggers. I scrolled through them one by one, the photos, the timestamps, the flirtation that had started long before the wedding day. There was no way to explain it away. It was deliberate, continuous, and deeply intimate. He stood behind me, silent now, watching his lies laid bare in blue and gray bubbles. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stared until I couldn't look anymore. The man I married was gone. Maybe he'd never been there at all. It was a mistake, he muttered behind me, voice low and pathetic, like the words could fix something. I turned to face him, and for the first time I didn't feel heartbreak, I felt clarity. He looked smaller somehow, stripped of all the charm and confidence he used to carry. It didn't mean anything, he added, desperate now, eyes darting around the room like he was searching for a way out. But I wasn't giving him one. I had given him my heart, my trust, my vows. And this was what he gave me in return, a mistake. I almost laughed at the absurdity of it. No, I said, voice low but unwavering. Forgetting your keys is a mistake. Cheating on your wife on your wedding night is a choice. He flinched slightly, not from the volume, but from the truth slicing clean through every excuse. I watched his face crumble, piece by piece, as the reality of what he'd done finally started to sink in. But it was too late. There was no apology big enough, no excuse deep enough, to undo what he had destroyed. I wasn't yelling. I didn't need to. The truth had spoken louder than any scream ever could. And he knew he had lost me. I turned away from him, walked to the closet, and began getting dressed with slow, deliberate movements, my fingers trembling slightly but my heart steady. He just stood there watching me in silence, maybe hoping I'd change my mind or collapse into tears again. But I didn't. I pulled on my jeans, buttoned my shirt, and gathered what little I had brought into a single bag. My wedding dress hung in the corner like some tragic costume from a play. I was no longer willing to perform. I didn't look at him until I was ready, and even then I didn't cry. I had already mourned the man he pretended to be. As I zipped my bag and threw it over my shoulder, I met his eyes one last time, not with anger, but with finality. There won't be a wedding night, I said clearly, my voice strong in a way I didn't know I had in me. His mouth opened slightly like he wanted to argue, but he didn't. He just watched as I walked to the door, each step echoing like the closing of a chapter. I didn't explain. I didn't justify. I didn't owe him anything anymore. In that moment, I chose myself. I walked down the hall of the hotel with my head high, ignoring the curious glances of staff and strangers. I didn't stop at the front desk. I didn't look back. I pulled out my phone, ordered a cab, and waited outside in the chill of the morning, still wearing the remnants of a night that was never meant to happen. The sun was just beginning to rise over the skyline, casting gold over everything except me. When the car pulled up, I climbed in without a word and shut the door behind me like sealing off a life. I didn't cry. Not yet. Not anymore. Back in my apartment, everything felt too still, like the air hadn't moved since I left. I dropped my bag on the floor, peeled off my clothes, and stood in the middle of the living room in silence. The bouquet from the wedding sat in a vase on the kitchen counter, still bright, still beautiful. I walked over, tore it apart stem by stem, scattering petals across the tile like the pieces of a dream I no longer wanted. I took off my ring and placed it in a drawer without ceremony. There was no rage, just a strange, heavy stillness. The silence now belonged to me, and I welcomed it. 2 weeks later, I walked into a small law office with my heart beating hard in my chest and a folder clutched tightly in my hands. The receptionist didn't flinch when I said the word annulment, just handed me a pen and told me where to sign. I filled out the forms in silence, the letters blurring slightly from the effort of holding back the final tears. I signed my name, slid the papers across the desk, and felt something shift. I hadn't expected it to feel like closure, but it did. Not loud or triumphant, just solid. That was the moment I officially let go of the future I had planned. I heard through a mutual friend that Michael had gone back to Jessica just days after I left. No surprise there. But things didn't turn out the way he probably imagined. Within a few months, she had left him, drained his bank account, and moved on to someone else. He lost his job soon after, something about missing deadlines, being unreliable. The same charm that once carried him through everything had finally run dry. I didn't celebrate his downfall. I didn't gloat. I just noted it with quiet detachment, like reading the final page of a story I had already stopped caring about. In the weeks that followed, I focused on putting one foot in front of the other, small routines, small wins. I promised myself I wouldn't let pain define me. I wouldn't live in anger. I started cooking again, taking long walks, filling the silence with music and fresh air instead of doubt. I began journaling, not just to process what happened, but to understand who I was outside of him. I wrote letters I never sent, poems I never shared, reflections I never erased. Slowly, I started to feel like I could breathe again. Slowly, I remembered I had always been enough. One morning I woke up, packed a suitcase, and booked a one-way ticket out of the country. No plan, no agenda, just the need to see the world through eyes that were finally mine again. I started in Italy, wandering through narrow streets, eating alone in piazzas, and learning to enjoy my own company. From there, I went to Greece, then Portugal, each city teaching me something new about resilience, about joy, about peace. I didn't run from the past. I just stopped letting it weigh me down. Each new passport stamp felt like a scar turning into a story. I was no longer surviving. I was living. With every plane ride, every sunset on a foreign balcony, every moment I didn't have to explain myself, I found a little more freedom. Freedom from needing someone to complete me. Freedom from chasing closure from a man who never deserved my forgiveness. I stood on cliffs overlooking the ocean, danced barefoot in village festivals, and laughed until I cried with strangers I would never see again. The weight I carried for so long slowly began to lift. I wasn't trying to forget anymore. I was finally learning how to belong to myself, and it felt like flying. In a cafe in Lisbon, I pulled out my notebook and began writing about everything I had seen, felt, learned. My heart poured onto every page without filters or fear. For the first time in a long while, the words felt honest, full mine. I didn't write about him. I wrote about me, about how heartbreak cracked me open in ways that made space for something deeper. about how I had mistaken pain for love and silence for peace. Writing helped me stitch myself back together word by word. And through those pages, I finally met the woman I had always been becoming. It happened on a rainy afternoon in Boston, in a quiet little bookstore tucked between two brownstones I'd nearly walked past. I ducked inside to escape the cold and wandered between shelves, drawn by the smell of paper and the low hum of jazz playing from an old speaker. That's when I saw him, Ryan, browsing the photography section, a vintage camera hanging from his shoulder like it belonged there. He looked up, caught me staring, and smiled like he already knew me. "You have good taste," he said, holding up a book on travel memoirs. I laughed without thinking. For the first time in years, I wasn't guarded. I was just open. We started talking right there between the shelves, and somehow it didn't feel like meeting a stranger. It felt like remembering someone I had forgotten. He asked about the book I was holding, and I told him about my travels, my writing, the way the world had started making sense again after falling apart. He listened, not waiting for his turn to speak, but really listening like every word mattered. We moved to the cafe in the back of the store, sat for hours talking about books, cities, and the quiet ache of starting over. It wasn't a spark, it was a steady, warm light. And I didn't realize how much I needed that. Over the next few weeks, we met again, sometimes planned, sometimes by coincidence, and each time the world seemed a little softer. Ryan never asked too many questions about my past, but he listened carefully to the truths I chose to share. He didn't try to fix me. He just showed up. Consistently. Calmly. With eyes that saw me not as broken but as someone rebuilding. He brought me coffee when I was writing and offered silence when I didn't have the words. And with every conversation, every quiet moment, I started to believe that not all men disappear when things get hard. A year later, when he asked if I wanted to move to Seattle with him, I didn't hesitate. Not because I was running or because I needed him to save me, but because I wanted to keep building a life with someone who never asked me to be smaller. We found a small apartment with creaky floors and too much sunlight, and we made it ours with used furniture, thrifted art, and Sunday morning routines. The city felt like a reset button, wet and green and filled with possibility. I kept writing. He kept taking photos. And together we started dreaming in a language that felt like home. For once, love didn't hurt. For the first time since I left Michael, I started thinking about the future again, not just next week, but 5 years from now, 10. I applied to a local college and enrolled in a communications program, unsure if I was too old or too broken to start over. But the moment I stepped onto campus with my notebook and secondhand textbooks, I felt like I was breathing new air. Every lecture reminded me of who I used to be before everything fell apart. Curious, driven, full of voice. I stayed late to ask questions, sat in the front row, and read more than I had to. I wasn't just studying. I was reclaiming myself. Balancing work, school, and life wasn't easy. I worked part-time at a local magazine, pored over textbooks at night, and spent weekends editing my travel essays. There were days I cried from exhaustion, days I questioned everything, but I never quit. I reminded myself that growth isn't supposed to be comfortable. It's supposed to be earned. And every time I pushed through a deadline or aced a test I thought I'd fail, I felt stronger. Ryan was always there. Never pressuring, just supporting, holding space for my ambition without shrinking from it. This time, no one was asking me to choose between love and myself. Ryan's love wasn't loud or dramatic. It was steady, unwavering, and exactly what I never knew I needed. He never made grand declarations. Instead, he showed up with soup when I was sick, with gas in the car when I forgot, with silent hugs when words wouldn't come. He celebrated my wins without jealousy and sat with me through the losses without pulling away. He didn't try to be the center of my world. He made space for mine to expand. In him, I found a partner who understood that love doesn't mean possession. It means presence. And for the first time, I felt truly safe. For years after I'd first walked into that classroom with trembling hands and too many doubts, I stood in a cap and gown, looking out at a sea of faces. I spotted Ryan in the crowd. Camera in hand, tears in his eyes, and felt something anchor in my chest. I had done this. I had rebuilt my life brick by brick with no shortcuts and no illusions. When they called my name and I walked across that stage, it wasn't just a degree I held. It was a symbol of everything I had survived. The applause washed over me like sunlight. I wasn't the woman from the hotel room anymore. I was someone new. After graduation, we took a risk. We opened a small travel photography agency. Just the two of us, our words and images stitched together into stories people could take with them. We started small, weddings, local magazines, personalized guides. But soon our work caught on, not because it was flashy, but because it was real. People said our photos felt like memories, and our words like places they'd been before. We poured our hearts into it, not chasing money but meaning. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. Every email from a happy client felt like another piece of my heart being returned. There was a moment one evening, sitting on our tiny balcony with wine in hand and Ryan's head on my shoulder, when I realized I wasn't waiting for the other shoe to drop anymore. I wasn't bracing for betrayal or questioning my worth, or living in the shadow of what had been. I was just here, present, whole. The chaos was gone, replaced by a calm I hadn't even known was possible. This wasn't the life I thought I wanted when I first said, I do. It was better. It was honest. And in that stillness, I finally felt like I was home. One morning, while checking emails over coffee, I received a message from an old mutual acquaintance, someone I hadn't spoken to in years. The subject line read simply, "Did you hear about Michael?" I almost deleted it without opening, but curiosity won. The message was short. Jessica had cheated on him, left him just like she had before, but this time she took more than his pride. His company had folded, his savings were gone, and he was reportedly crashing on a friend's couch, jobless and alone. I stared at the screen for a long time, not because it hurt, but because it didn't. It was the closure I never knew I needed. There was something almost poetic about the way it had all come full circle, how the woman he had chosen over me had done to him exactly what he did to me. The betrayal, the lies, the silence all mirrored back to him, not as revenge, but as a natural consequence of the life he built on deception. He had lost the job that made him arrogant, the relationship he had sacrificed me for, and the version of himself that had once seemed untouchable. Karma hadn't roared, it had whispered. And as I read those words, I felt no satisfaction, only distance. He was now just a chapter one had outgrown, one I no longer needed to reread. I closed the email and went back to my coffee, letting the steam warm my face as the morning light stretched across the kitchen table. I didn't call anyone. I didn't bring it up to Ryan. I didn't feel angry or smug or vindicated. What I felt was peace. That quiet, undeniable peace that comes when the past finally loses its grip. I had cried enough for that man to fill oceans, but now there was nothing left. Just air. Just space. Just the quiet certainty that I had made it out, and I was never going back. That evening, with the sky turning a soft orange over the Pacific and Ryan beside me, I lifted my glass of wine to my lips and whispered, more to myself than to him. That night broke me, but it also gave birth to the woman I was meant to become. He looked at me with gentle eyes, kissed my hand, and didn't ask for the story behind the words. He already knew. The waves crashed in the distance like a rhythm I'd finally learned to move with, no longer resisting, just floating. I had been abandoned, betrayed, shattered, but I had also rebuilt, redefined, and reclaimed every piece of myself. And in that golden moment I knew, this was not the ending. It was the beginning I had been brave enough to create.